On a
Effective
Tuesday, she
immediately,
buried her
Mr. Chen
father.
has been
By
removed from the board of
Wednesday, her
directors
husband wanted a
following the
divorce,
discovery of
citing
significant
financial
financial
problems.
irregularities.
And by
To the
Friday, he was
future,
already
darling.
married to someone else. He stood near her at the funeral, a man holding his own
And
umbrella,
to us.
while she cried in the rain.
This is
This was
strictly
just
a business
business,
matter
he told
now.
her, but he
My
made a
lawyers will
critical
be in touch.
mistake. He never imagined that the
Please, you
quiet
can't do
janitor who
this.
had raised her was secretly a billionaire. So when he entered a fancy party with his new wife, he was walking straight into his own downfall. If you have ever felt overlooked because you are the quiet one, tell me where you are from in the comments. We are about to find out if
Look at
loyalty
that,
means
sweetie.
anything
They're
anymore, because
everywhere.
this story will
Birds,
change how you
pretty
see everything.
birds.
This
It's a
story
perfect
shows
day
that
for the
real
park.
value is not about what you have, but what you are when nobody is looking. It also shows that the people who dismiss you might be giving you the best chance to show them who you really are. If stories about loyalty, resilience, and hidden strength inspire you, make sure to like, comment where you're watching from, share this story with someone who needs it, and subscribe for more powerful journeys like this. And now let us begin the story.
A machine was breathing for her father because his own lungs had stopped trying. Maya placed her hand on the hospital bed's cold railing, her knuckles white as she heard the steady mechanical sounds. The ventilator hissed, the heart monitor beeped, and the lights above hummed a flat, boring tune. She saw his chest rise and fall. But it was not him doing the work. "Daddy," she said in a low voice, getting close enough to smell the hospital disinfectant on him. "I need you to be strong for me just this once." His hand was warm in hers, calloused from a life of hard work. It was a hand that could hold on, but it could no longer wake up. The doctors said things like he was fading or not responding. Their words were too soft for the hard truth of it all. Her father was leaving her, and no nice words could stop it. For 48 hours, she had not left that room. She had not slept, and she had not eaten a proper meal. She was running on bitter coffee and the pain in her back from the uncomfortable chair. Her husband, Marcus, had only sent 2 messages. The first one asked if she was okay. The second said he would be working late. She did not answer either one. Outside the hospital, life was going on. Horns were honking, people were laughing. The world kept spinning, not knowing that hers had stopped. But inside that clean white room, time felt thick and heavy, as if the air itself were pressing down on her, testing to see when she would finally break. Her father had raised her entirely on his own. He never once complained or asked for anything. He simply gave her a constant, quiet love that she could always count on. When she was 7, he showed her how to tie her shoelaces. At 12, he taught her how to change a flat tire. At 16, he told her that the loudest people usually have the least to say. And when she was 23 and told him she was getting married, he did not give his blessing right away. He just watched Marcus during dinner, asking questions that seemed a bit too pointed. Later, he hugged her and said, "I trust that you know your own heart." He did not say he trusted Marcus. He said he trusted her. She did not understand what that meant back then, but it was becoming painfully obvious now. A nurse came into the room, moving quietly as she checked the equipment. The nurse avoided making eye contact with Maya. She had seen this kind of scene before and knew the outcome. Maya's phone vibrated in her pocket, but she paid it no attention. Then she noticed her father's fingers move slightly. She sat up straight, her heart racing. "Dad!" His mouth moved, but nothing came out. She leaned over him, desperate to catch any word he might say. He finally pushed out 3 words, each one a struggle. "Go to bank." Immediately after, the machines started to blare. Nurses rushed in, politely moving Maya into the hallway. She could only stand there and wait for them to confirm what she already felt. Her father was gone, and his last words made no sense to her. As a child, Maya believed that all fathers had 2 jobs. Hers did. She remembered him, coming home tired, but always managing a smile for her. She figured every dad knew how to fix a leaky pipe and tell wonderful stories before bed. And hers could. In the daytime, he was the janitor at the neighborhood school. At night, he did maintenance at a church 3 times a week. On weekends, he would help neighbors with repairs they could not manage. They paid him with hot meals, sincere thanks, and their deepest respect. He never appeared tired or upset. He just worked, came home, made dinner, and asked about her day like it was the most significant news in the world. They shared a tiny one-bedroom apartment. She got the bedroom. For 16 years, he slept on the couch and never once hinted that it was a burden. They did not own much, but what they had was always clean and well-maintained. Her father folded his work shirts with the same care other men gave their expensive suits. He shined his work boots every single Sunday night. On their kitchen refrigerator, the calendar had all of her school activities marked in a bright red pen. He attended every single one. Other kids had parents who came in suits with fancy watches and new cars. Her dad would arrive in his work uniform, smelling faintly of cleaning supplies, and would sit in the last row so he would not draw attention. But she was never ashamed of him, not for a second, because when the other parents were looking at their phones during a school play, her father's eyes were fixed only on her. He taught her things that a janitor should not have known. He showed her how to analyze a contract, to find the parts that were hidden. He taught her to tell if a person was being dishonest by watching what they did with their hands. He taught her how to enter a room and see who had the actual authority and who was just putting on a show. "Money makes a lot of noise, honey," he would tell her as they did the dishes. "But a good character is a whisper, and the best people know how to listen for it." She did not always get his lessons then, but she remembered them all. When she got her college acceptance letter, he began to cry. They were tears of complete and total pride. It was the kind of joy that made his whole face light up. "You are going to achieve things I never could," he told her. "You did everything," she said back. He just smiled and shook his head. "No, I made a choice to do something else. There is a difference." She never asked what he meant. Now, she really wished she had, because thinking back, she could see all the signs. The way he spoke, the books he read, and how the bank employees all greeted him by name. Her father was not simply a janitor. He was a janitor by choice for a very important reason, and she was about to learn that reason. It was raining on the day of his burial. It was not a soft, sad rain. It was a hard, angry rain that soaked through your clothes and turned the dirt to mud. It felt like the sky itself was furious. Maya stood by the grave, 6 months pregnant. Marcus stood beside her, but he held his own separate umbrella. She noticed it right away. When a sudden gust of wind blew the cold rain onto her face, he did not even flinch. He did not move to cover her. He just stayed perfectly dry while looking down at his phone. People came up to her, one after another, to give her a hug. They said all the usual things that are supposed to help. He is in a better place now. At least his pain is over. God has a new angel. She just kept nodding and saying thank you. She let them believe they were helping. But what she wanted to yell was that the better place was right here, with her. He was supposed to be here to see her become a mom, to meet his grandchild. He was supposed to stay. Marcus glanced at his watch twice during the service. When the pastor asked if anyone wanted to share a memory, Marcus said nothing. Maya talked about her father's hands, how they were always busy, always repairing things, always strong when her own were trembling. Her voice broke while she was speaking, and she had to pause. Marcus made no move to comfort her. As the coffin was lowered, she went to place a flower on it. Her shoes sank into the mud, and she nearly fell. A kind woman from their church caught her arm and helped her stay upright. "It is all right, my love." Marcus was completely oblivious. After the service, we all returned to the church for a small reception. They served sandwiches that no one touched and coffee that grew cold in thin paper cups. The chatter around her felt far too loud for such a heavy day. Utterly drained, Maya found a quiet corner to sit, placing a hand on her pregnant belly. Her baby was kicking more than ever, as if it sensed the deep wrongness in the air. Marcus finally found her after a full 20 minutes. He did not ask how she was. He simply stated, "I have to go out for a while." She looked up, confused. "Now?" she asked. "Yes," he replied. "It is that work event I told you about." She had no memory of it. Maybe the grief had wiped it clean from her mind. It didn't matter. "Okay," she whispered. He gave her a quick, routine kiss on her forehead. It felt like nothing. "I will see you tonight," he promised. But he never returned home. At 10 that evening, she was still sitting in their apartment, wearing the same dark dress from the funeral, just staring at her phone. No messages, no calls, no reason. There was just an echoing silence and a cold certainty washing over her. She had just said goodbye to the one man who was always there for her, and she was now realizing her own husband had abandoned their marriage long ago. She just had not been ready to see the truth until now. The final proof did not come from a confession or even a rumor. It arrived in a tagged photo on Instagram. It was nearly midnight when she finally forced herself from the couch. She changed out of her funeral clothes, washed her face, and climbed into bed. Her body ached with sorrow, but her mind simply would not switch off. Out of pure habit, she opened her phone and started to scroll, desperate for anything to distract her from two crushing realities. Her father was gone, and her husband was still missing. That is when she found it. A picture of Marcus at a restaurant she recognized. It was an expensive place with soft lighting and candles. He was sitting with a woman she had never seen before. This was clearly not a work dinner. The woman was young and perfectly styled, with a beauty that required effort and money. She was leaning forward, laughing at something he'd just said. He was leaning back, looking more relaxed and happy than Maya had seen him in months. The caption said, "New Beginnings." It included emojis of champagne glasses. The post was only an hour old. Maya stared at her phone screen until her vision blurred. The tears did not fall right away. She just sat there, phone in hand, feeling her own heart pound in her throat. Her father had been put to rest less than 12 hours before. And here was her husband, celebrating a fresh start. She tapped on the woman's profile, Isabel Chun, a marketing director with 73,000 followers. Every photo was a perfect advertisement for a life Maya knew she could never have. Maya then looked through Marcus's recent activity. She found a trail of likes on Isabel's pictures going back 3 entire months. There were comments that were too familiar, a pattern that was now painfully obvious. She had either been far too trusting or simply too worn out to notice. Her hands started to shake, not from sadness, but from something sharper. It was the feeling of her body finally catching up to the betrayal her mind had refused to accept. She got up and walked to the bathroom. She gripped the sink and stared at her reflection. Pregnant, exhausted, utterly alone, and married to a man who couldn't even wait a single day after her father's funeral to take another woman out. She did not throw anything. She did not scream or call him. She just stood there, taking slow, deep breaths, feeling the baby stir within her. A moment later, she went back to bed, set her phone down, and chose to wait. Marcus finally came home at 2:14 in the morning. She heard the front door click, his keys drop on the counter, and his footsteps in the hall. He did not even check on her. He went straight into the guest room. In that moment, Maya knew it was over. What she didn't know was how much worse it was about to get. He waited until morning to speak, not out of kindness. He did it because cowards prefer to do their dirty work in daylight. Maya was in the kitchen, staring at a coffee she had no plans to drink. When Marcus entered, he looked rested and freshly showered, as if he had prepared for this conversation. "We have to talk," he said. She remained silent, just watching him, anticipating what was next. He sat across from her and folded his hands on the table like it was a business meeting. "I think we are both aware this is not working," he started. Her stomach dropped, but she kept her face still. "I have been unhappy for some time, and I think you have been too. We just refuse to admit it." A bitter laugh almost escaped her. "We," as if this was a mutual decision, as if she was the one who had been so distant. "I want a divorce." "Dalo, boo," he said. The words landed with a cold finality. There was no doubt, no trace of regret in his voice. She felt the baby kick sharply, as if it also sensed the terrible shift in the room. "You are serious," she said, her voice quiet. "I am. My father just died 2 days ago." "I know, and I am sorry for that. But his death does not change our situation." Our situation? As if their marriage was just some random location they had wandered into. "I will support the baby," he continued, his tone shifting to that of a negotiation. "I will handle that responsibility financially. But you and I are done. I have met someone else." It was finished. She looked at him, really seeing the man he was for the first time. This was the person she had trusted, the one she had chosen, the one who had made promises to her in front of all their friends and family. And now he was sitting there, completely calm, dismantling her life as if he were just sorting through mail. "I have already consulted a lawyer," he added. "I will have the papers sent over by the end of the week. You will not need to do much. Just sign." "Just sign," she repeated, her voice empty. "Yes, I am trying to make this as painless as I can for you." Painless. She wanted to scream, to throw something at his head. She wanted to know how he could do this to her now, in this way, without a single shred of guilt. But she stopped herself. A piece of her father's advice echoed in her head. When people show you who they really are, believe them the first time. Marcus had just shown her exactly who he was. And she believed him. "Okay," she said. He blinked, clearly shocked. He had obviously prepared himself for a fight. Walked out of the room, and then walked out of the room, and then out of the apartment, leaving her there, 6 months pregnant and completely alone. In that moment of silence, her father's final words came back to her. "Go to the bank." She put on her coat and walked right out the door. If you think abandoning someone in their darkest hour is ever justified, you need to hear what happens next. This story will challenge everything you think you know about loyalty and justice. The bank was not like any normal bank. It felt more like a fortress designed to protect secrets. Maya crossed the enormous lobby, walking past giant marble pillars and chandeliers that seemed far too grand for a place that supposedly managed everyday accounts. The soles of her sneakers squeaked on the perfectly polished floors. Woman in a perfectly tailored suit, approached her. "Miss Richardson." Maya stopped in her tracks. "Yes, we have been waiting for you. Please follow me." She had not made an appointment, yet somehow they knew she was coming. The woman led her past the main counter, through a heavy door that required a key card, and down a corridor that was unnervingly quiet. They stepped into a small, private room with no windows. A man in his 60s, with kind eyes and gray hair, stood up as she entered. He had a gentle calmness about him. "Miss Richardson," he said softly, "my name is Victor Kane. I was your father's account manager for 32 years. I am so very sorry for your loss." All she could do was nod, a painful lump forming in her throat. "He told me to come here, right before he—" Maya could not finish the thought. Victor motioned to a chair. "He knew you would. he made very specific preparations. Victor then placed a small metal box on the table between them. The numbers 1, 2, 4, and 7 were carved into the lid. "This box requires 2 keys," Victor said, pulling one from his coat pocket. "Yours was likely with his personal effects." Maya reached into her bag for the large envelope the hospital had given her. Inside was her father's wedding ring, his old watch, and a small brass key she had not understood until this very moment. She handed it to Victor. He inserted both keys into their locks and turned them at once, producing a quiet click. Victor opened the box and then took a step back. "I will leave you now for some privacy. Please take all the time you need." He quietly left the room, closing the door behind him. For a moment, Maya simply stared at the contents of the box. On top was a stack of papers held by a binder clip and a sealed letter with her name written in her father's distinctive handwriting. But beneath that was something that took her breath away. It was a small collection of old photographs. The first one showed her father, maybe 25 years old, standing in front of a massive mansion. He was wearing a suit more expensive than anything she had ever seen him own, surrounded by people who looked incredibly wealthy and powerful. She moved to the next item, a faded newspaper clipping. The headline announced, "Hartwell heir vanishes after family dispute." She looked at the date. It was from 34 years ago. The name below the headline was James Hartwell III. She glanced back at the picture. It was undeniably her father, but that was not his name. Her hands trembled as she picked up the stack of documents. The first page detailed a legal trust formed 28 years ago and revised just 3 weeks before her father passed away. The sole beneficiary was listed as Maya Richardson. The trustee was Victor Kane. She scanned through legal jargon she did not understand, seeing terms like irrevocable and spousal exclusion clause. Then her gaze fell upon a number near the bottom of a page. She read it once, twice, and a third time because it seemed impossible. Her father, the man who had mopped floors for 35 years, had left her something beyond comprehension. It was not a home or a savings fund, it was an empire. With unsteady fingers, she tore open the sealed envelope. The letter inside was on simple paper, written in her father's familiar, neat script. "A baby girl, if you are reading this, then I am gone. I am so sorry I could not tell you this myself. Some truths are easier to handle once you have lived long enough to know why they matter. My name was not always James Richardson. I was born James Hartwell III, the sole heir to a family that valued legacy over love and control over character. My father built an empire, my grandfather expanded it, and I was expected to carry it on. There were no other options. Then, when I was 26, I met your mother. She worked in a small bookshop and would read poetry during her lunch break. She made me laugh in a way I never had before. She did not care about the Hartwell name or the money that came with it. She cared about the man I was when no one was watching. I wanted to marry her, but my family refused. It was not that she was not good enough. It was that she was not part of their grand design of mergers and strategic alliances. They gave me an ultimatum: the family fortune or the woman I loved. I chose her, and they made me pay for it. Maya paused to wipe away tears. They cut me off entirely, disowned me publicly, and erased me from the family records. I changed my name and took jobs that did not require a background check. I began a new life with nothing but your mother and the belief that a good life is built on meaning, not on money. Your mother and I had 6 incredible years together before she passed away, giving birth to you. I promise you, those 6 years were the richest of my life. But here's the secret my family never discovered. Before I walked away, I did not abandon the fortune. I completely rearranged it. I secured it within such complex legal structures that their team of lawyers could never find it. I gave control to a man I trusted completely, and then I waited. I did this not for revenge, but because I knew that one day you might need it. The money grew quietly, managed by people who understand that real wealth is security. It is about having choices. This fortune gives you the power to protect yourself from the very people I ran from. I wanted you to grow up free from that world. I needed you to find yourself before you found this wealth, to fall in love for the right reasons, and to build your character without an audience. Now that you know the truth, you must understand something else. This is not meant to change you. It is meant to give you the power to stay exactly who you are, without fear, compromise, or needing anyone's permission. Maya set the letter down. Her father was not running from his money. He was protecting her from it. The other documents laid everything out in cold, precise language. It was an irrevocable trust, created 6 months after her father changed his name and updated every 5 years. The final update was made 3 weeks before his death, immediately after he learned his time was running out. Maya read through the papers carefully, absorbing every detail. This trust was not just cash in an account. It was a fortress, built with legal expertise and foresight. Every asset was shielded within legal entities, making them safe from lawsuits, divorces, or creditors. Her name was not on any public record. There were no property deeds or tax filings that could ever lead back to her. Victor Kane was the trustee, with full authority to manage and invest everything. However, he was forbidden from distributing a single dollar without her written consent after her 25th birthday. She had turned 25 just 3 months ago. One section in particular caught her eye. It was titled, Spousal Exclusion Clause. She read it twice to understand the dense legal terms, and then the meaning became clear. If she were to ever marry, her husband would have zero claim to any of her assets. The fortune belonged to her and her alone, forever untouchable. This was not a sign of distrust. It was the ultimate form of protection. Her father had seen wealthy families ruined by messy divorces. He had built a wall around her future that no one could breach, not a fortune hunter, not a con artist, not even a good man in a marriage that simply did not work out. A husband could not touch the principal, the income, or any part of it. The trust was hers, designed to be safe from anyone who might use her to get to it. Her father had seen it coming, not Marcus himself, but a man just like him, someone with a handsome smile and hollow words, who would disappear the moment things got tough. That is why he created the trust. It was designed so she could access money any time, and once she did, it was hers completely. The law would see it as her separate property. Marcus could never touch it, not in a divorce or any other situation. For 30 years, her father had built this defense to protect her from the kind of pain his own relatives once caused him. The legal papers also protected her future children and outlined what to do if she could not make her own choices. One phrase stood out, repeated throughout the documents. The beneficiary maintains sole and absolute discretion. Simply put, the money was hers to command. Nobody could tell her how to use it, and no one even needed to know it was there. She thought of Marcus and his divorce papers, which he presented as a generous favor. He was so arrogant, so blind. He did not know the first thing about her father, her inheritance, or the fact that the woman he was casting aside was now more powerful than he could ever dream of becoming. The question was not about her ability to strike back. It was about her desire to do so. Her father's words returned to her. Real strength is knowing you do not have to use it. Power is patient, and she decided she would be, too. She read the final pages of her father's letter. He wrote that knowing who she was more important than what she had. This money does not define you. You are made of stronger things, like integrity and sacrifice. You saw firsthand what happens when love is chosen over wealth. I raised you in simplicity, not as a punishment, but as an education. You learned the value of earning your way, of waiting, and of making choices based on principle, not convenience. That is a lesson the wealthy rarely grasp. They confuse their money for character. You are different. You know true strength has nothing to do with possessions. It is about how you act when you have nothing. Now that you have everything, never forget that lesson. Sooner or later, people will find out. When they do, you will see who they really are. Your true friends will remain. Those who left you will come running back, asking for another chance. Let them. Watching people show their true nature is a valuable education. Some will be angry you kept this secret. That is their problem. You owe no one an explanation for your privacy. Others will expect the money to change you, to make you arrogant or careless. Show them they are wrong by staying true to yourself. Then there are the ones who will misread you entirely. They will mistake your quiet nature for weakness and your kindness for foolishness. These are the people to observe closely. They cannot hurt you with money, but they will test your spirit. How you handle them will shape who you become. My real gift to you is patience. It is the power to stay calm, to let others think what they want, and to remain silent when every part of you wants to shout. Revenge is easy, but restraint, choosing not to use your power, that is true strength. She just sat quietly, a hand on her 100 Sir, the din vi ser to graduation burden point ka pebo no nam to Korean but the bisa bestand kobo and the tapa the kuta shed but together but took a but shara tab but presto but paholo tip kasira what that did it that the biscan but the piso pala the puppet that to what but could satisfy and person baso på personströmmar sökre akademischen Schule som baba ben diamets from Dumbledore aber dat de kom shit dan with you for that an kosten by the batani dit zit dat shuttle but when we didn't do a banta that handen balad vatant savaka was so what the bishop got were so short that so best so was the big on our a said bar there's a but that's a bad so the big bus from that down the bomba Boa, Sumba, for Bath and Mamtawa, Obada, Sapo, but the Bustam up and laugh on his to skin, but sorry, how the. She just sat quietly, a hand on her stomach, feeling her baby move. Her father was right. Some battles are not worth fighting. The people destined to lose will manage it all on their own. 20 minutes later, Victor returned, knocking gently before entering. "Do you have any questions for me?" he asked. "Just one," she said. "How much is there?" Victor sat down and handed her a single summary sheet. It showed a vast portfolio of stocks, real estate, and global funds spread across 12 countries. Her father had built it carefully over 34 years, always managing it quietly and without taking foolish risks. The total value was $5.2 billion. The number seemed unreal. She kept reading it, trying to reconcile this fortune with the father who raised her in a small apartment, packing her lunch in used paper bags. "Impossible," she breathed. "That is a cautious figure," Victor explained. He always preferred slow, stable growth. It could have been much more. A dizzy spell washed over her. "What do I do with all this?" Victor smiled warmly. Whatever you want. That is the point. It is yours, with no strings attached. Does anyone else know? Just me, and now you, he confirmed. Her father was extremely private. She thought of Marcus, who was so proud of his offer to help with the baby. He had no idea, and she would not be the one to tell him. I want this kept quiet, she stated firmly. Victor nodded in agreement. A very wise decision. Everything will stay as it is until you decide otherwise. She shook Victor's hand and left the bank, alone and grieving, but no longer the same person. She now knew a secret that Marcus did not. The woman he had thrown away was not weak. She was protected. And patience, as her father taught, was her greatest strength. 3 weeks later, photos of Marcus and Isabel's courthouse wedding surfaced online, sparking outrage in the comments about the timing. Maya felt a brief stab of hurt when she saw them, but she said nothing. She focused on her doctor's visits, setting up the nursery, and rereading her father's letter until she knew it by heart. Imagine being left by your husband right after your father's funeral, while you are pregnant. That was Maya's new reality. Yet, whenever anyone asked how she was doing, she offered a calm smile and always said, "I am fine." The surprising part was that she truly was. The betrayal hurt, of course, but she understood a lesson her ex-husband Marcus never would. Real power does not need to be put on display. It simply waits. Marcus rushed through everything. Their divorce was finalized in only 43 days. He was married again just 12 days after that. Maya signed every paper without argument. She did not ask for any support or contest their few assets. She simply took what was legally hers and let him walk away, convinced he had won. Marcus made a single public post, a carefully worded statement about finding his own happiness. His new wife, Isabel, showed off her brand new ring online with the caption, "When you know, you just know." The public reaction was immediate and divided. Some people praised him, while others were disgusted by his timing. Maya became a topic of local gossip. The tragic, pregnant wife abandoned in her time of need. She was the woman who never spoke up for herself. The one everyone watched, just waiting for her to fall apart. But Maya refused to give them the satisfaction. She heard the whispers from friends and saw the awkward messages from acquaintances. Strangers on the internet argued about whether Marcus was a monster or just a man following his heart. Through it all, Maya remained silent. She never offered a correction or a defense because she was better than fine. She was patient. Her father had taught her that public opinion changes like the weather, but a person's true character is permanent. Right now, Marcus was showing the world exactly who he was without her needing to say a word. By the 7th month of her pregnancy, the noise began to die down as people found new stories to talk about. Maya focused on preparing for her baby. She assembled furniture, washed tiny clothes, and read books about motherhood. Her father's lawyer, Victor, called her every week to see if she needed anything. She always said she was fine, though she was struggling with the profound silence in her life. Her father was gone, her husband was gone, and she felt deeply alone. The one person who could have understood was the version of her father from 30 years ago, a man she would never know. Then, one Tuesday afternoon, a special letter arrived in her mail. The envelope was made of thick, cream-colored paper, with her name written in elegant handwriting. There was no return address. Inside, she found a formal invitation. It said, "You are cordially invited to the first event of the Richardson Hartwell Foundation." Her heart skipped a beat. She reread the words carefully. Richardson Hartwell was her father's real name, which meant it was her name, too. The event was a black tie gala scheduled for October 14th. At the bottom, a smaller line read, "Your presence is requested as the Foundation's primary honoree." She was completely baffled. Victor had never said anything about a foundation. She immediately called him, and he answered right away. "You got the invitation," he said, sounding like he already knew. "What is this all about?" Maya asked. "It is your father's last project," Victor explained. "He spent 2 years planning it. I have been setting it in motion since he passed. It is time." "Time for what?" she asked, her heart pounding. Victor paused, then said softly, "It is time for everyone to learn who you really are." Maya felt a wave of panic. "I never agreed to this." "You do not have to do anything that makes you uncomfortable," he assured her. "But the event is happening. The guest list is set." "Who is on it?" she asked. There was another short pause. "Everyone who matters," Victor replied. "And that includes Marcus. Would support education, job training, and would support education, job training, and single-parent homes." It was created to honor the legacy of James Richardson, a man who served his community quietly for over 3 decades. The release included an old photograph of her father in a business suit, looking powerful and confident. People who knew him as a janitor were confused. How could a school janitor have this kind of money? The announcement named Victor Kane as the director, but mentioned that an anonymous donor had made it all possible. The community was filled with a mix of excitement and doubt. $50 million was a massive sum, and James Richardson, the humble handyman, did not seem like the source. Rumors started to fly. Some thought it was a scam, while others guessed a secret celebrity was using her father's good name. A few people even whispered that Maya had received a huge divorce settlement and was trying to repair her image. No one came close to guessing the truth because it was simply too extraordinary to imagine. Maya watched from a distance and said nothing, trusting Victor to manage everything. Her only task was to show up, but the guest list sent by Victor was a heavy weight. On an encrypted list of 200 names, one stood out near the bottom: Marcus Chun, her ex-husband. A cold knot formed in her stomach. "Why is he invited?" she asked Victor on the phone. His answer was a shock. "Your father specifically requested it." That made no sense. Her dad passed away before Marcus even left her. "Your father was a very perceptive man," Victor said carefully. "He had a way of seeing things before they happened." And in that moment, she understood. Her father had known this betrayal was coming. He had ensured Marcus would be there to witness the final truth. This was not about revenge. It was about education. "I do not know if I can do this," Maya confessed. "You do not have to," Victor reassured her. "But you will always wonder what might have been." She thought of her father's advice to be patient and let people reveal their true selves. "He will bring Isabel," she whispered. "Probably, and there will be gossip." As if in response, she felt the baby kick. "Okay," she finally said. "I will be there." "Good," Victor replied. "This night is about you. It is time everyone understood that." Maya arrived 30 minutes early and met Victor at a private entrance. "You look absolutely perfect," he told her. She had chosen her outfit with great care, an emerald green dress that complemented her pregnancy. For jewelry, she wore only one piece, a priceless diamond necklace from her father's safety deposit box. It had belonged to her grandmother, the woman his family had disowned. Wearing it felt like a silent act of loyalty. "How are you feeling?" Victor asked. "I am terrified," she admitted. From a private room with a one-way window, Maya watched the guests fill the ballroom. Then she saw him. Marcus entered with Isabel on his arm. Isabel wore a bold red dress, demanding attention. Marcus, however, looked lost and confused, clearly wondering why he was even there. As they collected drinks from the bar, playing the part of a happy couple, Maya could feel her own pulse hammering in her throat. Victor appeared beside her. "We can wait until the program starts," he offered. "No," Maya said quietly. I want to walk in just like everybody else. She remembered a lesson from her father. Confidence is not feeling ready. It is moving forward anyway. She left the room, walked down the hall, and took a deep breath before stepping through the main doors. The room did not go silent at once, but the atmosphere shifted completely. Conversations died down as every head turned to see her. They saw a woman, very clearly pregnant, entering the grand event completely on her own. Marcus saw her, and his expression shifted from a blank stare to confusion, then to outright panic. Isabel whispered something to him, but he just kept staring. Maya ignored him, moving with quiet purpose to her reserved seat at the front. Just breathe, she told herself. A kind-looking older woman approached her. He would be so proud of you tonight, she said, her eyes warm. A lump formed in Maya's throat. As more people came to offer condolences, Marcus sat frozen across the room. A terrible thought was beginning to form in his mind. This was not some random charity event. This was her event, and he had no idea what was about to happen. The lights dimmed as Victor walked onto the stage. "Good evening," he began. "Tonight, we honor a man who lived by his values every single day, especially when nobody was looking." He spoke of her father's kindness and dedication. Then his tone changed. "What most of you do not know is that 34 years ago, James Richardson walked away from a life of incredible wealth because he refused to give up on love. He changed his name and built a new life based on his character, not his family's money." Confused whispers filled the room. Marcus leaned forward, listening intently. "That decision cost him a fortune," Victor continued, "but it gave him his integrity and a daughter who inherited his principles." Victor paused, then gestured toward Maya. "It is my honor to introduce the founder and primary benefactor of the Richardson Hartwell Foundation, Maya Richardson." The room erupted in applause, which grew louder and louder as Maya stood and walked slowly toward the stage. With each step she took, she watched the truth crash down on Marcus. His confusion finally turned to pure horror as he connected the pieces. Richardson Hartwell was his father-in-law's real name. The $50 million foundation was hers. He could only stare at the woman he had abandoned. The pregnant, grieving woman he thought was broken was now standing on a stage, revealing a strength he never knew she had. She was not a victim. She was a legacy. When Maya reached the microphone, the entire room fell silent. Most important decisions are the ones nobody sees," she said. "He taught me that love is about being there when it is difficult, especially when you have every reason to walk away." A few people in the crowd nodded. "He also taught me that wealth without character is just noise. Real power is what you do when no one is forcing you to act." Most of you knew my father as a janitor, a man who showed up early and never asked for credit. "He was born into one of the wealthiest families in the country," she continued. "He was set to inherit an empire, but he walked away from it all because that family told him that love was not a good investment." Gasps could be heard throughout the room. He spent the next 34 years proving them wrong. Her voice was clear and steady. "He showed that a good life is measured by your integrity, not by your bank account. When he passed away, he left me something far more important than money." She paused, letting the silence settle. "He left me a choice." The entire room was hanging on her every word. "I could have kept this fortune a secret and disappeared. No one would have ever known." She let that powerful thought sink in. "And now that I know who I am and what I have, I am choosing to do what he would have done. I am going to build something meaningful. I will help the people who are often ignored. I will lift up families who are struggling." Victor stepped forward and placed a document on the podium. The Richardson Hartwell Foundation is launching with an initial endowment of $50 million, he announced. Applause started to spread through the crowd, but Maya raised a hand. She was not finished. That $50 million, she said clearly, represents less than 1% of the total trust my father established for me. The clapping stopped instantly. A stunned silence fell over the room. The full valuation as of last quarter, she concluded, is $5.2 billion. Be accountable. And that is what I will be accountable. And that is what I will be. Then she stepped back from the podium. The room erupted in thunderous applause, with people rising to their feet. Maya returned to her seat with grace. Across the hall, Marcus was frozen. His face was ghostly white as he clutched the table. He was frantically replaying everything in his mind. The woman he had abandoned for having nothing possessed more than he could earn in 100 lifetimes. He had thrown it all away, not because she failed him, but because he never took the time to see who she truly was. If you have ever dismissed someone for being quiet, this is the time to reconsider that judgment. Subscribe if you know that integrity and character are priceless, because this story is far from over. Marcus tried to leave quickly. The moment Maya stepped off the stage, he stood, took Isabel's hand, and muttered something about getting some air, but Victor was faster. He did not block their way. He simply stood by the exit with a calm smile, a look that conveyed everything without saying a word. Marcus stopped in his tracks. Isabel looked puzzled. What is the matter? He could not answer her. What could he say? That the woman he had divorced just 8 weeks ago, the one he left while she was pregnant with his child and mourning her father, had just been revealed as one of the wealthiest individuals in the state. It finally hit him. He had walked away from a fortune, all because he was too impatient to endure a difficult time. Every decision he had made for the last 6 months was built on a complete misunderstanding of who was actually in control. Isabel tugged on his sleeve as he numbly sat back down, feeling like a machine. Around them, the room buzzed with celebration for the new foundation. They praised Maya's amazing composure and her father's inspiring story. He overheard someone say, "Can you believe he gave up all that money for the woman he loved? That is true romance." Another person replied, "And to raise a daughter who is so humble, that is even more impressive." Every word was a painful reminder of the man he had failed to be. He looked over at Maya, who was now surrounded by supporters offering thanks and hugs. She looked tired, but her spirit was unbreakable. "Isabel." "Wait," she said, her voice Isabel. "Wait," she said, her voice slow. "That is your ex-wife?" He could only nod. "The one you told me had nothing?" He remained silent. She subtly pulled her hand away from his, her eyes wide. "Marcus, what did you know about any of this?" "Nothing," he admitted quietly. "I knew absolutely nothing." Her next words were a soft accusation. "You never asked." He watched her expression shift in real time as she reassessed their relationship. She was not angry. She was calculating, wondering if she had bet her future on a man who could make such a catastrophic error in judgment. He felt it then, a deep and bitter humiliation. This must have been exactly how Maya felt when he had reevaluated her worth based on what he thought he knew. "I have to speak with her," he said, suddenly. "Do not," Isabel warned. "I must. Marcus, just let it go." But he was already moving through the crowd toward Maya. Victor stepped in his path, his approach polite but firm as steel. "She is not taking visitors right now. I only need 5 minutes. She is not interested in speaking with you." Marcus felt his jaw tighten. "You cannot answer for her." "I do not need to." Victor replied calmly. She asked me to make sure you understood that there is nothing more to say. The words landed with the heavy finality of a slamming door. He stood there, useless, as the woman he had misjudged so profoundly continued her conversations. He had hoped for some kind of closure, an explanation, or maybe even forgiveness. But Maya owed him nothing, and she gave him nothing. 10 minutes later, she slipped out through a side door. There was no grand exit. She was simply gone. As Marcus watched her leave, he finally understood what it felt like to be completely and totally irrelevant. Naomi Grace Richardson was born on a Thursday. She was 7 pounds, 4 ounces, with a beautiful head of dark hair, and she saw the world with her grandfather's eyes. Maya held her, for the first time, in the quiet of the hospital room. No husband was anxiously pacing outside, and no family filled the waiting area. There was only Victor, who had insisted on being there, and a compassionate nurse named Petra. Petra stayed well after her shift was over, believing that no new mother should be alone at such a moment. "She is absolutely perfect," Petra whispered. Tears rolled down Maya's cheeks as she nodded. Her father should have been here to hold his granddaughter, to see the legacy he had fought to protect. The weight of the baby in her arms was a promise kept. It was a future secured by a man who would not be there to witness it. Maya studied Naomi's peaceful face, a perfect canvas of new life. "My sweet girl," she murmured, "I will always keep you safe." With her father gone, Maya knew she had to be strong enough for both of them. She traced the tiny lines on Naomi's fingers, memorizing every detail of her daughter. "Your grandfather loved you before he ever met you," she whispered to the sleeping baby. "He made sure your life would be secure and full of choices." Naomi gave a tiny yawn, a small but complete person. Victor came closer, his face softened with warmth as he looked at the child. "James would have been so proud," he said gently. "You have done a wonderful thing, Maya." She released a long, slow breath. "I feel like all I did was survive." He offered a kind smile. "Sometimes that is more than enough." She stayed in the hospital for 2 more days, learning the rhythms of a newborn. She mastered feeding, changing diapers, and functioning on only a couple hours of sleep. A bouquet of flowers arrived from Marcus. The arrangement was generic, with a simple card that read, "Congratulations, wishing you both well." She threw them in the trash immediately. It was not a gesture of anger, but an acknowledgement that they were hollow. They came from a man who had chosen to be a stranger. Shortly after, Isabel posted a new picture online. It featured her and Marcus at a sunny outdoor cafe, smiling widely. The caption read, "Choosing joy every day." Maya did not read the comments. Her world was focused on more important matters. When Maya brought Naomi home, the apartment felt entirely new. It seemed both smaller and more peaceful, filled with a presence that had never been there before. She put the bassinet beside her bed. Above it she hung the mobile her father had bought before he became ill. He had carved the small wooden animals himself during long, sleepless nights. She had found them in his apartment, carefully wrapped with a note that said, "For when she arrives." Those same little animals now turned gently above his granddaughter, making soft shadows dance on the wall. Maya sat in the rocking chair, holding Naomi close. She began to hum the lullaby her father used to sing when she was a child. For the first time since his passing, a sense of peace settled over her. The grief was still there, but she was finally understanding the lesson he had tried to teach her. A legacy is not what you leave for people. It is the people you leave behind. The foundation expanded faster than anyone expected. Within 6 months, it had provided scholarships for 40 students. It also opened a new center for job training and partnered with 3 local charities. These organizations helped single parents avoid eviction and manage overwhelming medical bills. Maya oversaw it all with quiet dignity. There were no press conferences or fancy events. She only gave speeches when absolutely necessary. She would show up, make the decisions, sign the documents that changed lives, and then go home to her daughter. Soon, people started to recognize her in public, not as a celebrity, but as someone who was making a genuine difference in their community. One afternoon in a supermarket, a woman in her late 30s walked up to Maya, her eyes wet with tears. With a trembling voice, she said, "You covered my son's college tuition. I don't know if you recall who he is, but he's the first person in our family's history to go to college. This is all because of you." Maya gave her a warm smile and replied, "It's because of your son. He's the one who put in the work." The woman shook her head, insisting, "No, it's because someone believed he was worth it. Thank you." These kinds of encounters started happening more often. Maya would receive letters and emails or meet people whose entire lives had been turned around by the foundation's support. She kept every single letter, reading them on days when she felt discouraged and questioned if her work made a real difference. It always did. The work was never about the money. It was about the doors that money could open. Her father had understood that money without a purpose is just empty noise, but money used with intention is how you create a legacy. By Naomi's first birthday, the foundation was serving communities in 3 different counties. Victor managed the daily operations, while Maya steered the overall mission. Soon, people stopped wondering where the funding came from. They were just thankful it was there when they needed it. Marcus occasionally heard about Maya's work through friends on social media or in circles that made him uncomfortable. He once tried to contribute by sending a check for $5,000 directly to the foundation's office. Victor mailed it back immediately. There was no explanation, just the returned check with a single word written on an attached note: "Declined." Marcus never attempted another donation. Isabel left him just 14 months after the gala. Her exit was not filled with drama. It was a practical decision. She had finally realized what Maya understood all along. Marcus was a man who would always seek an upgrade, only to regret his choice when he realized his mistake. She refused to be the next person he completely undervalued. Their divorce was handled swiftly and without fanfare. Almost no one noticed, because Marcus had become precisely what Maya predicted: irrelevant. She never sought to ruin him. She just created a new life that did not include him. In doing so, she reduced him to a footnote in a story that was never really about him. Marcus saw his daughter, Naomi, only one time, entirely by chance. He was on a walk in a park near his office when he spotted them. Maya was pushing a stroller while Naomi, who looked to be about 18 months old, pointed at birds and chattered away. Maya looked different, more confident and comfortable in her own skin than she ever had during their marriage. He thought about approaching them for a moment, but then he saw Victor was with them. Victor walked beside the stroller, laughing at something Naomi said. He was engaged in a way Marcus had never been, so Marcus stayed back, watching from afar. Naomi had her mother's smile and her grandfather's eyes. She looked happy, healthy, and incredibly loved. A complicated feeling twisted in his gut. It was not jealousy, but recognition. He saw that he had been offered a chance to be part of that family. He could have been the one pushing that stroller and listening to his daughter's joyful laughter. He could have created something with meaning, but he chose a different way. It was not that Maya was not enough for him. It was that he had convinced himself she required too much effort. He had craved a life that was simple, convenient, and without challenges. Instead, he ended up with a life that was profoundly empty. Isabel was gone. His professional reputation had suffered a series of quiet hits. He did not grasp the full extent of the harm until people just stopped answering his calls. The upgraded life he had imagined felt more hollow every year. During that same period, Maya had built something remarkable. She did it not with loud pronouncements of revenge, but with quiet, relentless determination. The foundation flourished. Her name began to appear in important contexts, such as on education panels and community planning boards. She never sought the spotlight, but it found her because people naturally respect true competence, and she had proven hers again and again. Marcus, by comparison, was completely stuck. His career had flatlined. All his relationships were shallow. His life felt less like something he was living and more like a role he was playing. He sometimes considered contacting her, perhaps to offer an apology or an explanation. But what was there to say? I'm sorry I abandoned you when life got hard. I'm sorry I failed to see your real worth. I'm sorry I was too proud to ask for help. None of it would change anything. Maya had moved on, completely and for good. He was alone with a harsh lesson he had learned far too late. Years passed. Naomi entered kindergarten. The foundation marked its 5th anniversary. Maya's name eventually appeared in a business journal in a profile titled, "The Philanthropist You Have Never Heard of." The article detailed her father's story, the foundation, and its incredible impact. It mentioned Marcus only a single time, in passing. The line read, "Richardson was previously married, but has been a single mother since her daughter's birth, choosing to focus on her family and philanthropic work." A single sentence had reduced his entire role in her life to a minor detail. He read it again, feeling a sharp pang. The words were not cruel, they were simply accurate. He had been demoted from a chapter to a footnote, a person who was there for a moment before anything important began. The most painful part was knowing that he deserved it. Maya stood in her father's apartment for the last time before the lease expired. 6 years had passed since he died. 6 years of building a new life, growing, and discovering who she was without anyone defining her. Naomi was with Victor for the afternoon, giving Maya the quiet she needed to close this final chapter alone. She wandered through the rooms, which felt smaller than she remembered. She touched the kitchen counter, where her father had prepared countless meals. She sat on the couch, where he had slept for 16 years, so that she could have the only bedroom. The apartment was empty now. The furniture was donated, and his things were packed away. All that remained were memories and one last envelope she had saved. It was the one Victor held for her until she was ready. She opened it carefully. "Baby girl, if you are reading this, then enough time has passed for you to understand what I need to say. Loss is not a punishment, it is permission. It is permission to discover who you are without anyone else's expectations weighing on you. It is permission to create something that reflects your own values, not to seek someone else's praise. It is permission to leave anyone who cannot see your value, not out of anger, but because you are too occupied with building a better life. Over these years, you have proven what I always knew. Character is not defined by what you own. It is defined by what you do when you are at risk of losing everything. Some will say you were lucky, that you inherited money and opportunity. Let them think that. What they will never grasp is that wealth without wisdom is just a pile of cash. And you, my girl, had wisdom long before you had money. I am so proud of you. Not for your success, but because you have always been kind. You stayed humble, and you have always been true to yourself. That is your true inheritance. All my love, Dad." She folded the letter, placed it back in the envelope, and wiped away her tears. Then, she locked the apartment door for the final time and stepped out into the bright afternoon. Her daughter, Naomi, was waiting at Victor's office and ran to her as soon as she saw her. "Mama!" Maya swept her daughter into a tight hug. "Did you have fun? We got ice cream." "Of course you did," Maya said, smiling at Victor. He just shrugged with a warm grin. "Grandpa privileges," he said. The three of them walked to the car together, with Naomi chattering excitedly about her day. And Victor was telling silly jokes that made her laugh. As Maya fastened her daughter into the car seat, she looked at this little girl who would never know her grandfather. But Maya knew she would grow up surrounded by his principles. In that moment, a feeling she had not felt for a very long time returned. It was a profound sense of gratitude, not for the things she had, but for the person she was finally free to be. Her father had been correct the whole time. Losing him was not an ending. It was a beginning. It was the permission she needed to choose her own path. There would be no more apologies, no compromises, and no need for anyone else's validation. And she knew she had chosen correctly. Thank you so much for watching all the way to the end. We sincerely appreciate your support. If you enjoyed this story, please remember to press the like button, subscribe to the channel, and leave a comment for us down below. We always love reading your thoughts, and we have some good news. The experience does not need to end now. Just click on the video that is right here on your screen to begin another amazing story. Trust us, it is one you will not want to miss. Thanks again for being such a wonderful part of our community. Until we meet again, stay curious and continue to explore the stories that truly speak to your heart. Our team carefully researched, developed, and edited this content to deliver meaningful stories with valuable life lessons. Each narrative is designed to entertain, inspire, and empower our viewers. We are convinced that great stories can change lives, and we are dedicated to bringing you content that makes a difference. Warning: this story contains themes of betrayal, loss, and emotional hardship that may be sensitive for some viewers. Disclaimer: this narrative is created for storytelling and educational purposes. While inspired by real-life themes, it is not financial or legal advice. We are grateful to have you in our community.